Hello, everyone. If I could have your attention, that is ever fleeting because we're 3 days of learning in. If you're eating, continue eating. If you're getting food, please get more food. There's plenty to share. I hope everyone enjoyed the last round of concurrent sessions. Is that a yes? Yeah? Okay. We're almost at the end of our time together. And I hope everyone is feeling as grateful as I am at being here for this celebration and this conference and this convening of people with like minds and with shared dreams. If you recall, on day one, we started our day with thought leaders, elder youth, also known as adults, as part of the lived experience panel. We thought it would be a really good idea to finish what we started and bring our panelists back one last time. Before I reintroduce them and also take my final exit, I want to bring attention to the complexity of being a dual expert, a person with lived experience, and also a professional in our space. On day one, I attended a concurrent session around the theme of research. Are we really making a difference? And I want to bring attention to this because the space that was created in that room was extremely vulnerable. A question was posed: what is weighing heavy on your heart? One of the answers was lived experience, but at what cost? Moral distress. Even if I'm stable, how can I assure the stability of others? And we talked it through. We cried together. And the prompt that followed after that was, what gets you out of bed in the morning? So just take a moment and just reflect on that question. I'm giving this preamble to really set up the next tidbit. The response that struck me about what gets you out of bed in the morning was someone stating that someone told them, I am Hope Corps. Hope Corps. Yeah, woo! That's right. Our collective experience and what keeps our engines moving is Hope Corps. Although I'm reintroducing our panel, part of me thinks that they are Hope Corps, and they'll address this. So as I give my final address to you, I want you to re-welcome with open hearts and open minds, Thamer, Michael, Jayne, Jupi, and Alex, who with the conviction that what they're doing is making sense, will start the closing of our conference and hopefully leave us open with possibilities. Let's welcome them to the stage.
Hi, everyone. We said we were actually going to come up here and do like a calisthenics routine and some stand-up to try to keep the energy high, but I lied about that. We're just going to have a discussion. How are folks feeling? Okay, relatable. Maybe a little tired, maybe a little inspired, maybe a little Hope Corps. Which is going to be our new thing, maybe. My name is Jayne Malenfant. You've probably heard me talk a lot. Maybe you've heard me talk too much over the last couple of days. One thing I wanted to start off with is a reminder that for the panel will be in English and French, the two official colonial languages here in Canada. And so for folks who don't understand French, you can use the little QR code on your app to use Wordly translator. Thank you, Marty. Apparently there was some issues with this, but it has been resolved. So if not, maybe find a nice bilingual person who's willing to whisper in your ear. I also wanted to introduce something that people have mentioned a bit very briefly about how I enter this work in the context of making the shift and some of the projects that Steve talked about on Monday in our dialogue. People might have heard about the LiveX Scholars Network, but not been sure what it was. And so I got brought into this work as a younger person. And I got to participate in developing and running a group of lived experience scholars who were either community researchers or students who were working across contexts to try to figure out this question of how do we start in our lived experiences, but also build networks to move and action those knowledges in conversation with research and scholarship. And I've been so grateful to be a part of building that and continuing to learn from folks. And I particularly wanted to thank Caro Leblanc, who is probably somewhere and definitely didn't leave. Yay, Caro! Oh, merci, Caro, for supporting us all and making sure we're organized, because I'm a mess. And other members of the network, like Alex Nelson, who's been in the mix, Charlotte Smith, who started this work. And so I'm really glad that I've gotten to connect with you all through this network as well. And if you ever want to do some of that work, you can email me anytime. And I'm going to stop talking now. How are you all feeling? Seba? Well, one question I wanted to start us off with is there a lesson that came out for you in these past few days or something that you're going to take away from this space? And Thamer, if you're up for it, we will start with you.
Yeah, so we were limited to one lesson, and I don't think I could do it.
Sorry.
But the one thing that really stood out to me is that, like, I've been trying to bring, like, all of myself to every single space I'm in, whether that's, like, my queerness or my indigeneity or my research, because I find that I've been, like, compartmentalizing myself. And I'm only Indigenous around my Indigenous friends and my partner. But that also happens in the sector as well. It's like we all work in our little compartments. And I think we should be getting away from that, working together and bringing all of ourselves to every single space we're in, which is really scary to think about sometimes, but we'll figure it out.
Thank you, Thamer. That is scary. Have folks felt like they were bringing their whole selves into some spaces over the last couple of days? Or trying it out, maybe? At least 2 people. All right. Thank you, Thamer. That's such an important lesson. I'm sorry I only limited it to 1. Michael, how about you?
So again, just like Thamer just said, when it was limited to just one thing, I just was like, there's not one thing. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, it's been, I first want to acknowledge the elders that are here, and I really want to say miigwech and thank you for, for inviting me into the privilege of learning and having an understanding about how the world views from this place can really influence the prevention of youth homelessness and making that shift. You know, I really received a lot of interesting and important insights, so I'm really appreciative of that. We had a conversation, I think I had a conversation with someone about the concept of being human and being beings, and I think that's something that I've felt and I've heard many people talk about, so that was really interesting. Also wanted to acknowledge Jama Shelton and the book that I found in the little library because Dr. Alex Abramovich and Jama Shelton have really been informing, and it's just so interesting that I just happened to land here in this amazing space with all these amazing people that I'm so glad are so aligned on this topic, you know? So I'm really happy that I'm here, and just thank you for the opportunity too, Jayne, that, you also opened the floor to having, narratives, experiences, people in your work who maybe don't always have the opportunity to be part of these conversations, to share, or to even be asked, like, what happened to you? And well, there's a concept that I learned about yesterday, and I think we were talking about it, which is post-traumatic wisdom. And I'm really excited to just keep looking at things that way.
Thank you so much, Michael. Jupi.
Yeah, that conversation you were talking about, that was with me. That was yesterday. Very nice. Hello. A lesson that I've lesson that I've been like learning throughout this process is kind of like the reverse of what Thamer said. It's actually been about like compartmentalizing myself appropriately. So like normally I burn myself out at these things like very, very quickly. But I've adopted a practice of going outside and putting in my headphones and not talking to anyone for like a minimum of 15 minutes. Otherwise my brain is probably gonna like shut down. So if you see me walking around with headphones with like city face on, I promise I don't hate you. I literally am doing this to protect my well-being. And I think that's definitely something I'll like work on carrying with me through other aspects.
Have other folks been engaging in strategic compartmentalization the last 3 days? And
Hey, 1%.
at least 3 or 4 people too. Yeah, thank you so much. Alex?
Bonjour, je tiens à remercier tout le monde pour m'avoir accueilli ici, me permettre d'offrir ma voix aussi. Fait que ce que je retiens de cette conférence-là, ce sont les différentes pratiques et les enjeux systémiques des jeunes et dans les autres provinces et à l'international. Ce qui m'ont fait apprendre conscience, c'est qu'il y a des gens qui font mieux que nous en prévention. Ce qui m'a le plus surpris, c'est la rapidité de certains programmes pour apporter de l'aide directement pour empêcher les jeunes de tomber dans la rue, par exemple en payant leurs dettes en 24-48 heures, mais aussi en les aidant à comprendre les actions à prendre pour éviter la rue. Let's go.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Alors, une question que je pense qui continue à sortir pour nous, c'est, oui, les savoirs expérientiels, lived experience, c'est vraiment important, but sometimes the question is, at what cost? And so I see lived experience as one of many forms of knowledges we can take into doing this work and actioning things. I hate action as a verb. I've said it like 3 times. How can we action, solution-oriented, something? But a question that I think all of you have also chatted with me about in the past couple weeks and couple days is, how do people who want to meaningfully and effectively be engaging lived knowledge as one form of expertise do that? And how do we do it in youth homelessness prevention, whether that's in service provision or research or advocacy? And I'll start with Jupi.
Okay. Yeah. So one point that like immediately came to my mind when I was like looking at this question written out was like being mindful of tokenization, and if you are kind of using lived experience experts as like props or like something to like get more like grant money, or just like kind of like picking one's brain and not giving us like our flowers. I think researchers, managers, people that are like higher up, because lived experience folks, we tend to be like frontline people, right? They need to understand that like lived experience people are gonna come from a way different like purview and worldview than somebody who has had the privilege of like getting a master's degree in most cases. Like there's also a lot of people with lived experience who do have education or like academic accolades, so like there's like nuance to that. But I don't think, like I know in my experience, there have definitely been times where like, they want the knowledge that I gained from my story and my experience, but they don't want like the effects of like the trauma that I've like gone through. Like I know we've been talking a lot about like crying this week and like having like, you know, just like showing your like emotionality. And I think there's like some shame around that, but I think it should be a lot more like welcomed. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be like well enough to enter the space and participate on the terms of that space often. Yeah, I agree. Alex, Même question, comment est-ce que tu penses que l'expérience vécue peut être mieux soutenue?
Moi, je pense que partager son expérience de vie dans différents contextes aide à montrer l'envers de la médaille et de nuancer les discours avec faits, de nuancer les discours des faits pour mieux comprendre notre réalité de l'itinérance, désolé. Ça nous permet de prendre la parole pour nos pairs qui sont dans l'ombre et ça nous donne aussi une fierté de se faire entendre et de contribuer à l'amélioration des conditions de vie des générations à venir. Notre expérience de vie, ce n'est pas un diplôme universitaire, mais on l'a quand même payé cher, physiquement et psychologiquement, pour acquérir, et c'est important de nous donner notre place pour prendre part aux décisions. Les jeunes qui sont dans la rue connaissent mieux que quiconque leurs besoins et ce qui ne marche pas dans le système. Il n'y a pas mieux que quelqu'un qui les vit au quotidien pour faire la lumière sur le point. Il faut réduire les barrières pour qu'on puisse s'engager dans les décisions et d'avoir du feedback de notre contribution. Il ne faut pas nous consulter que pour consulter. Il faut que notre voix serve réellement à changer les choses. N'oubliez pas que j'ai besoin de vous comme vous avez besoin de moi afin d'apporter les changements dans notre communauté. J'espère que vous allez prendre les meilleures décisions pour élever la voix des opprimés.
Et peut-être c'est l'idée encore de la solidarité.
Yeah.
Est vraiment important qui sort aussi à cette conférence. Thamer, same
Yeah,
question.
so I have a bunch of different thoughts about this, but the main one, well, actually, sorry, it's been a long 3 days, and I am still thinking. But like willingness to accommodate and think outside of the box. Like don't just do things the way you regularly do things, and like be willing to compromise or do something completely different, like write zines or interview people or do art or sit on the floor while you're meeting. And that also comes with like accommodations, like physical accommodations, having ergonomic desks or like meeting outside instead of in your office. And like emotional accommodations, like making room for crying and making room for, you know, being angry or like whatever needs to happen, and like have that space and that like agreement with the people you're working with, because we're all human and it comes out in our research. I know I cried a lot during my grad school and working at the lab, like a lot. And just accepting that like challenges and bumps are gonna happen. Like you may not meet that deadline that your grant proposal said. Block shit's kind of important, but like just to be willing to like work around it and come up with new ideas is super important, because the academic walls and structures of all these organizations we work with don't actually fit with real life situations. And I think trying to force people into these boxes creates way more harm than any good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thamer, for those thoughts. Michael.
So, again, I also agree that in these spaces, there needs to be that recognition that it can't be performative, right? I think that's really harmful. And so inviting and including lived experiences, you know, I'm fortunate and lucky that you asked me to come here because I'm looking at things retrospectively. And yeah, I think the bigger thing for me is, you know, like I'm trying really hard to just remember that it's bigger than just one narrative. We're all here in order to affect some kind of change, right? To improve the lives of people who are literally in this moment maybe thinking to themselves, I never see, you know, Canadian Latino representation in these narratives, and I'm in my 20s, or, you know, some tragic event just happened in my life, and if I could, you know, add to anything by sharing my lived experience, that's something that I'm, you know, willing to do. And you know, Jupi and I were talking about being Latino and how important it is to have that representation in any community setting, right? I think when the plurality of the narratives are missing, then you're not really finding you're not really identifying all the problems and finding those solutions, right? So, yeah, just inviting people to be part of it and supporting them in how they show up. Like anger consultants, I think someone was mentioning that, and there's velvet rage, right? There's all kinds of things that can be really healthy and healing. I've been really personally fascinated right now, again, with Dr. Bruce Perry and his work, and how, understanding the brain better and the science behind trauma and how to use that science to affect change within the systems is so interesting to me. So I think that, that too, like incorporating different worldviews, that when I hear, for example, Dr. Bruce Perry or Dr. Tara Swart talk about all these themes, they resonate so much with everything we know as human beings, right? But now we just have more understanding based on like the science that's coming out about the brain and how the brain's so malleable and so plastic, and we all have the ability to affect, positive outcomes and preventative outcomes, and then, yeah, hopefully help people thrive instead of just survive or, trying to stay afloat.
Yeah.
I didn't even, I'm going to let you finish, I'm sorry. So when Michael's talking about, adding to the plurality of experiences and like everybody's research, I think I would be remiss as like the Black person on this panel to not acknowledge like a really like somber observation that I've had, not only in this conference, but like most of the conferences that I've come to in Canada, is that there's a lack of Black representation of Black youth, Black people in general. I personally feel very invisible by these studies. They're great, but out of however many sessions there were at this conference, there was one about Black youth. I think it was today or yesterday. And that doesn't make any sense, especially in Toronto. Toronto's like very Black, very Caribbean. I'm Afro-Caribbean, I'm Afro-Latino. It's like it would be very important for me, and I'm sure a lot of other folks in here to feel more represented in the work of others, and it's always very jarring coming from the States, because that's usually one thing that's in there is like talking about like Black and Latino populations. So yeah, if there's something you can do in your work to add specifically that or those or our voices, I would really like implore you to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you all. Yeah, and I think it's again going back to the system that makes that the case and perpetuates whiteness, especially in spaces of research and in spaces where a lot of power is held in a Canadian context, has to be examined for prevention to work. And I think for me, lived experience is a way of understanding an issue like youth homelessness, and so experiences of that phenomena are important, and that they're not a monolith, that they have to represent what's actually going on. But also that we all have experiences of housing that tell us something about what does work and what doesn't work, and we know that things do work for particular people in ways that we can address. It's a very vague way to follow up on your insightful comments. Thank you all, and I'm excited to keep doing this work with you. I have one more question for the panel. Are people up for one more question? Okay, you're with us? You're eating your delicious cheesecake? So the last question I have for you all is, what is the one thing, or maybe more than one, that you want people to be leaving with today, to take with them into their work? And I know for me, being able to talk about love at a conference like this is rad. And so I am going to take away a lot of love for you all. But yeah, what are you hoping that folks in the room can hold with them? And we'll start with Michael.
So I think what I would like everyone to take away, I mean, I don't know, we've all taken away so much, right? But just that, just the intention of having, honestly, the plurality of experiences to affect the change that we all want. I think that's really important. Jeff Olivet was saying that it's not a state, it's a state, not a trait. And so sometimes when, you see that Canadian Latino youth, or that Afro-Latino youth, or that Black youth, or that Indigenous youth, who, because of all the things that they've gone through, what happened to them, is trying really hard to navigate a system, and maybe, you know, in our work as social service workers or social workers, researchers, academics, whatever, we can try not to take anything personally in the spirit of supporting that individual. I think, you know, it can be really challenging work because you know, it can be depleting, but I think centering the person, especially vulnerable racialized youth, is so important, because having that community, like we've all been talking about, is such a transformative thing. And I think Marty mentioned it at one point too, you know, it's when you have all of those supports in place, it really changes the outcome and then prevents. So I think that's something I hope people, you know, continue all doing, yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Jupi.
Yeah, so I'm a funny guy. I like to incorporate humor in everything I do, especially because, quite frankly, my life has been rather hard. And two, I do this work. So a lot of things are like very serious and stoic in my life. And I really just like implore people to like find humor when they can. Like even when I'm like working with my clients, like don't overdo it. If you need a lesson on what it means, like come talk to me after class or whatever. But like, for example, today I'm leading by example by wearing the monologue from Dr. Evil in Austin Powers on my dress. It's not a poem, it's not lyrics, it's not that deep. It's literally a joke, because I don't know, we all need a little something to like have a little bit of lightness while still balancing like the severity of like our situations. But I do think like having humor about things is, laughter is medicine. Like that's like a saying, right? So I really like lean into that.
Yeah, I will say people with lived experience of trauma are some of the funniest people I've ever met. Go us. Or ongoing trauma. Thank you, Jupi, and I love your dress. Alex, même question.
Moi, je veux que tout le monde retienne que la voix des jeunes est importante pour changer les choses. Je veux que chaque fois que vous voyez un jeune en besoin, que vous soyez là pour lui tendre la main et que vous briserez les barrières pour réellement l'aider. N'oubliez pas que toutes les personnes en situation d'itinérance restent des êtres humains avant tout. Attends un instant. OK. Reste des humains avant tout et des citoyens à part entière qui ont des droits. Ce n'est pas parce qu'on ne dort pas la nuit qu'on ne peut pas rêver. Tout ce qui m'arrive pourrait vous arriver. Agissons dans la prévention pour éviter l'évitable. It's finished.
I feel like people who are not using the translation app are not getting how rad it says if you don't speak French, but merci beaucoup, Alex. And l'espoir and hope, I think, is something that's come up in a tangible way, where you can recognize human beings. Thamer.
Yeah, so I'm gonna break the rules here. There are two very important things I need to remind people of, especially in these really scary political times. First, for Canadians in the room, the Liberal Party is electing their leader and you need to vote. Otherwise, people like Poulin and Trent and Musk get to rule us. And second, Ontarians? We need to vote tomorrow to get Doug Ford out. So please do that. So the thing that I want people to remember is that we're human beings. We need things like joy and love and connection, and that we're not just a number or a story for you to take away. Like, we are our stories, but we're so much more than that. We have like so many great things to offer, some really funny jokes to share with you. We're more than just a thing to be studied or to be solved.
Thank you so much, David. Rad, thank you. Do you all have anything else you want to share while we have everyone stuck here in this room with us?
So one thing I keep forgetting to do is honor the fact that when my grandparents settled here, and I love that Jama talked about, dedications, is that, we settled in Montreal, Turtiake, and I really would like to encourage anybody who's working with specifically Latino youth to encourage them to be bilingual. The two colonial languages in this country, French and English, open so many doors, and I know that it's done that for me. And so, je suis désolé que je ne parlais pas beaucoup de français, mais it's important for me to give that representation to Latinos who do speak the languages of this country. And if they don't, encourage them to put their kids in French immersion. Anytime I see a new settler family on the streetcar or something, and I see them being young with young kids and whatever, I tell them just fight through all the barriers that they're going to tell you that you don't know this and that, well, you don't speak French, whatever. Like, Latino children and youth should be encouraged to have all the opportunities and tools to better themselves, and language is one of those.
Thank you. Et peut-être aussi que c'est l'idée qu'on peut donner tous les outils à les jeunes et les familles et aussi voir comment les systèmes peuvent changer. That we can give young people and families all the tools at their disposal to navigate the current systems while recognizing that those systems have to change.
And hopefully in the future everybody starts learning more indigenous languages too. I think that's so important.
Y por qué no español también? Well then, thank you everyone. Thank you for being in this space with us. Wait, what? No, I'm like, let's go, get up.
I will let you all go soon.
Okay.
Just wanted to give a shout out to all the people who helped me with my meals and helped me carry my walker up and down the stairs. This place is not accessible, and we need to make more spaces accessible physically. But thank you to everybody who helped me, because this is the only reason I'm still on this stage right now.
Yay. And thank you for the folks who asked us to come up here. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks, Marty, for being so